Why Alan Watts said you're already enough, and always were. We live in a world that constantly tells us we're not enough. From the moment we can comprehend language, we're fed a subtle but relentless narrative. You need to be more, be smarter, be prettier, be stronger, be richer, be better. It's in the ads we scroll past, the grades we chase, the approval we beg for silently in every social interaction. And over time, we internalize this message until it becomes the background noise of our lives. We start waking up each day with a quiet, anxious question humming beneath the surface of our thoughts. What do I need to fix about myself to finally be okay? But Alan Watts, a philosopher who didn't just teach ideas but lived them, offered a radical answer to that question. One that stops you in your tracks. One that, if truly understood, could change the entire way you see yourself. He said, in essence, you are already enough, and you always were. Now that sounds nice, right? It sounds comforting, but if you sit with it, it also sounds deeply unsettling, because it challenges everything we've built our identity around. What if all the striving, all the effort to improve ourselves, to prove ourselves, was based on a fundamental illusion? What if the real problem was never that we were lacking, but that we believed we were?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Alan Watts didn't come to this conclusion lightly. He arrived at it through years of studying Eastern and Western philosophy, through deep immersion in Zen Buddhism, Taoism, and Vedanta. And the insight he uncovered is this: the self that you think you are, the voice in your head, the image in the mirror, the personality you defend, is not the whole of you. It is a temporary expression of something far deeper, far more mysterious, and far more complete. You are not a separate ego struggling in a hostile world. You are the universe, expressing itself briefly as a human being. Let that sink in. You are not in the universe. You are the universe. In the same way that a wave is not separate from the ocean, you are not separate from life itself. You are not a mistake. You are not a glitch. You are not an unfinished project. You are a process, a dance, a flow of energy and awareness moving through time. And the idea that you are not enough is not a truth, it is a thought. A thought you inherited from a society that profits from your insecurity. And here's the wild part. The moment you stop trying to become enough, you begin to feel that you already are. It's like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. As long as you're chasing it, it stays out of reach. But the moment you stop chasing, it's just there. You realize that all the trying, all the grasping was built on the assumption that something was missing. But when you truly come into the present moment, not conceptually, but viscerally, you feel it. The completeness, the enoughness, the utterly unnecessary burden of self-improvement lifts, and what's left is peace. But why is that so hard to accept? Why do we resist the idea that we're already whole? Because we've been programmed to believe that value must be earned, that worth must be proven. And if we drop that belief, we fear we'll become lazy, complacent, aimless. But Watts flips that fear on its head. He says the desire for security and the feeling of insecurity are the same thing. To hold your breath is to lose your breath. In other words, the more you cling to the idea of needing to be more, the more distant your peace becomes. So here's a question that might shake your worldview. What if the version of you that you're trying so hard to become doesn't actually exist? What if it's a fantasy built by your fears and society's expectations? What if your real self is not a goal to reach, but a presence to return to? And what if that presence is already here, quietly waiting beneath all the noise? Watts often said that enlightenment is not about becoming divine. It's about recognizing your divinity. Not in a religious sense, but in the sense that you are life itself, not something separate from it. You are not a cog in a machine, you are the whole machine dreaming itself as a cog. And when you realize that, the entire game changes. You stop trying to win at life and start playing with it. You laugh more. You worry less. You stop asking, what do I need to do to be worthy? And start asking, what happens when I live like I already am? And this isn't about giving up on growth. It's about shifting the foundation from which growth arises. Instead of growing out of fear of not being enough, you grow out of love for what's possible. Instead of fixing yourself, you start expressing yourself. Instead of performing for the world, you begin to participate in it fully and freely. So I'll leave you with a question that only you can answer. If you stopped believing you needed to become someone else, who would you finally be? The illusion of improvement, why trying to fix yourself keeps you stuck. Let's go deeper. Because this idea that you're already enough isn't just comforting, it's disruptive. It threatens to dismantle much of what you've been taught about growth, success, and even healing. You see, most of us have unconsciously internalized the belief that life is a self-improvement project. We treat ourselves like broken machines that need constant upgrading. We diagnose ourselves endlessly emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, always looking for the next fix, the next tool, the next practice that will finally make us feel whole. But here's the paradox. The more we try to fix ourselves, the more broken we feel. Why? Because the very act of trying to fix yourself is built on a false premise that you are fundamentally flawed. Alan Watts saw this with piercing clarity. He said, you are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. That sounds liberating, but it also exposes something uncomfortable. We cling to the idea of a static self, a fixed identity that can be improved, refined, made perfect. And yet we are never the same person twice. Our thoughts, emotions, even our cells are always changing. So who exactly are we trying to improve? Who is the you that needs fixing? And who is the you that's doing the fixing? This recursive loop creates an anxiety that never fully resolves. You meditate to fix your anxious mind, only to become anxious about whether you're meditating correctly. You read books to grow, only to feel smaller when you realize how much you don't know. You set goals to become better, only to feel shame when you don't hit them. And around it goes. Improvement becomes a treadmill, always moving, never arriving. Watts would say this is because we've mistaken the menu for the meal. We've made the concept of growth more important than the experience of being. We've become so obsessed with becoming someone else that we've forgotten how to be ourselves. And here's the kicker. The moment you stop trying to be better, you often become more present, more grounded, more real. Because you're no longer performing. You're no longer chasing. You're no longer resisting who you are. This doesn't mean you stop learning or evolving. It means you stop doing it from a place of lack. There's a profound difference between changing out of curiosity and changing out of self-rejection. One expands you, the other contracts you. One is rooted in love, the other in fear. And fear-based growth is never sustainable. It always collapses under its own pressure. So what would it mean to grow without fixing? To evolve without shame? What if instead of asking, how do I become better, you asked, how can I more fully express who I already am? That question shifts everything. Because now you're not starting from a deficit, you're starting from wholeness. You're not trying to escape yourself, you're trying to reveal yourself. Most self-improvement culture thrives on your insecurity. It sells you the idea that you're incomplete so it can profit from your longing. But Watts invites us to a different path, a path where growth is not a desperate sprint away from your flaws, but a gentle unfolding of your truth. A path where you don't chase enlightenment like a prize, but wake up to the realization that you are, in a sense, already enlightened. You've just been distracted by the noise. Imagine if you stop measuring your worth by how productive you are, how spiritual you seem, how much progress you've made. Imagine if you stopped keeping score altogether. What would it feel like to live a life that wasn't a project? What would it feel like to be a process instead of a performance? Can you let go of the idea that you need to be fixed? Because here's what Alan Watts knew: when you stop resisting what is, you begin to flow with it. And in that flow, you discover something extraordinary, that you were never broken. You were only believing a story that said you were. The mirror of existence. How realizing you're the universe changes everything. If everything you've been told about who you are is incomplete, if you are not just a skin-encapsulated ego, as Alan Watts would say, but a ripple in the ocean of existence, then the question becomes, what does it mean to live as the universe itself? That's not just poetic language. Watts meant it literally. He insisted that our sense of being a separate self is an illusion, a useful convention for communication and navigation, but not the truth of our being. And once you begin to understand this, not just intellectually, but viscerally, it reorganizes everything. Your fears, your ambitions, your suffering, your sense of identity, they all begin to shift. Because now you're no longer a lonely actor on a hostile stage. You're the stage, the actor, the audience, and the play. This realization doesn't come through effort. It comes through recognition. You don't have to become the universe. You already are. You only have to stop pretending you're not. And that pretending, though deeply ingrained, is the root of so much of our pain. We walk around feeling small, cut off, incomplete, because we've mistaken the wave for something separate from the sea. We believe we have to find our place in the universe, as if we were dropped here by accident, as if we don't already belong by nature of being. But Watts flips that framing entirely. He says, you are not in the universe, you are the universe experiencing itself from a particular point of view. Now that's not an abstract metaphysical idea. It has practical implications. Because if you really are the universe, then how could you be unworthy? How could you ever be not enough? The very idea becomes absurd. Would you ever look at a tree and say it's not treeing hard enough? Would you criticize a wave for not being tall enough, or a sunset for not being the right color? No. You see them as expressions of nature, each doing what it does, each perfect in its particular unfolding. So why don't we see ourselves that way? Because we've been trained to view ourselves as separate, as objects, as strategies rather than expressions. We turn ourselves into tools for success, for validation, for survival. And in the process, we forget that we are also the sky watching itself, the stars dreaming in human form, the infinite wrapped in the illusion of limits. And that illusion, while convincing, is not who we are. Watts often said that the self is a pattern, like a whirlpool in a river. There's no static thing there, just motion, just process. But we cling to identity as if it were a fixed object. We define ourselves by our past, our trauma, our roles, our reputation. But all of that is just narrative. Useful, yes, but not real. The real you is not your story. The real you is what's aware of the story. The silent witness, the presence behind the personality. And that presence is not separate from the presence in everything else. Once you see this, even briefly, it changes how you relate to life. You stop fighting against reality and start moving with it. You stop trying to control everything and start trusting the rhythm. You stop asking, what do I need to do to be worthy? And start asking, what does the universe want to express through me right now? That question isn't about passivity, it's about alignment. It's about listening more deeply to what is, rather than constantly trying to impose what should be. So let me ask you something that might feel uncomfortable. What if your life is not something you're supposed to master, but something you're meant to participate in? What if your suffering comes not from being inadequate, but from believing you're separate? What would shift if, instead of trying to be enough, you saw yourself as a temporary form of something that is always more than enough, life itself? And here's the most beautiful part. Once you stop trying to be someone else, you begin to see everyone else more clearly too. You stop judging people solely by their roles, their status, their flaws. You start seeing them as other waves in the same ocean. And that recognition births compassion, not as a virtue, but as a natural response to realizing your shared being. Alan Watts didn't offer his philosophy as a way to escape life. He offered it as a way to finally enter it. to stop hovering above experience, analyzing, managing, controlling, and to start feeling it, living it, trusting it. Because when you know that you're the universe in motion, you stop needing to prove anything. You stop needing to chase what you already are. And in that stillness, something profound returns: presence, peace, and a deep sense of home. The end of the chase. Living freely when you know you're already complete. So now we arrive at the heart of it all, the space beyond striving, beyond fixing, beyond pretending to be something other than what we are. Because if everything Alan Watts pointed to is true, if we are already enough, if we are not separate from the universe but of it, as inseparable as the wave is from the ocean, then what does life look like when we finally stop running? What does it feel like to live from a place of already being complete? It's a strange transition. At first, it doesn't feel natural. We're so used to chasing success, chasing love, chasing meaning, chasing some future version of ourselves that finally has it all figured out. We've tied our worth to motion. If we're not progressing, we must be failing. But Watts would tell us that this whole framework is a trick of the mind. He'd say the chase is the illusion, because the moment you believe fulfillment lies somewhere else, you've already placed it out of reach. And that's the trap. You can never arrive at enough if you start from the belief that you're not. When we start living from the knowing that we are already whole, everything changes subtly but profoundly. We begin to act not to prove our worth but to express our being. We pursue dreams, not because we're empty without them, but because we're full enough to overflow. That shift in motivation transforms anxiety into curiosity, pressure into play, competition into collaboration. We stop treating life as a test and start treating it as a dance. But this isn't about passivity. It's not about sitting back and doing nothing. It's not about abandoning ambition or discipline. It's about changing the engine. You still build. You still strive, you still grow. But the growth comes from joy, not self-rejection. The striving comes from love, not lack. You learn to distinguish between action that emerges from your wholeness and action that tries to compensate for perceived deficiency. And that distinction is everything. So what happens when you stop chasing a better you? You start actually meeting yourself. You begin to notice the small, miraculous details of your existence that were always there: the rhythm of your breath, the absurdity of laughter, the softness of light on a quiet morning. You begin to realize that the meaning of life was never hidden in some distant horizon. It was always here, in this moment, in its raw and simple aliveness. And suddenly, ordinary things become extraordinary again, because now you're present enough to see them. Watts used to say, you didn't come into this world, you came out of it. That single idea, if truly understood, undoes years of existential anxiety. It means you belong, not because of what you achieve, not because of what others think, but because you are. No one questions whether a cloud is qualified to be in the sky or whether a mountain is deserving of its height. And yet we question our own right to exist, to take up space, to be at peace with ourselves. Why? Because we've forgotten what we are. And so we return to the beginning. You are already enough, not because you've done all the right things, not because you've reached every goal, but because you are life, aware of itself, unfolding in real time. You are not a problem to be solved. You are not a project to be completed. You are a song being sung, a poem being written, a dance being danced. And the more you remember that, the more alive you become. So here's the final question I'll leave you with, one that only you can explore, not with your mind, but with your life. If you truly knew deep in your bones that you were already enough, how would your life change starting right now? Because maybe that's all awakening really is: not a dramatic spiritual event, but the quiet, powerful moment you